Hello, welcome to the video. Thank you so much for watching. And today I am going to be doing a reading survey for the books I read in 2022. I got the survey from Perpetual Page Turner, and I will link it in the description if you want to look at it or do it yourself. It's a really cool survey. I really think it's very interesting. So I encourage you to do it. So the survey wasn't necessarily made for 2022. It was made previously, but the questions apply for any year. So I'm just doing it for 2022. It works. And this is going to be based on books that I read in 2022, not necessarily books that came out in 2022. And the last little caveat I'm going to add is that I'm excluding manga from this survey just to make it easier on myself, because I wouldn't know what volumes to include or just the whole thing. I don't know. There's too many variables there. So I'm just going to be doing books in this survey. And if you happen to be curious at all, I will leave a list in the description of all the books I read in 2022. It'll just be on a Google Doc or something. So again, if you're curious, so let's get into it. The first couple things are going to be reading stats for 2022. Let me scoot to the side so I can actually put up visuals for you. So the first stat is the number of books I read in 2022, and that number is 41. I read 41 books. The next is the number of rereads, and that for me is 2. And the genre I read the most was fantasy. That's not even a contest. It's absolutely fantasy. Now on to the rest of the survey. So I'm going to be skipping around a little bit. I'm not going to be doing all of the questions from the survey. So I'm going to put up the number in the survey of the question that I'm doing. So they're not going to be necessarily 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It might be 1, 2, 5, 8, 10, whatever. So just so you know why the numbers are going to be a little bit off. Best book I read in 2022. I said this in my top 10 books of 2022, and it hasn't changed since that video. It is Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones. That book was just lovely. It was amazing. I loved it. It got my heart. It was just so good. For all the reasons why I like that book, you can watch my top 10 video, the previous video. Next is a book you were excited about and thought you were going to love more but didn't. And for me, that is An Unkindness of Magicians by Kat Howard. Going into this book, it had so much of what I liked. It had a female main character. It was an urban fantasy set in modern day. It was a competition. I love competitions. That's my favorite trope probably in all of stories, not even just books. Just I love competitions. And the book wasn't even about the competition. It was, but we spent no time there. Everything felt so surface level. The characters were really generic. It was just not what I expected, unfortunately. Most surprising book I read, and I'm going to give that to the entire Arc of a Scythe trilogy by Neil Shusterman. This trilogy was so good. I didn't expect it at all. I went into it pretty skeptical because it's not really a dystopian and it's not a post-apocalyptic, but it's sort of in that family. It's almost more of a utopian than a dystopian. But it's still that futuristic kind of setting where the world has changed so much. There's new technology, there's new rules for the way that we live. And because of the craze in the early 2010s around that type of story, I was just I don't know, I was kind of done with it. So I said, I was just super skeptical, and it was so good. It was really, really good. I would wholeheartedly recommend that series to anyone. It was really good. So that surprised me so much. The next one is a 3-parter. It's, first of all, best series you started in 2022, best sequel, and best series ender of 2022. So first of all, the best series I started is, I think, the First Law trilogy. So The Blade Itself and on. It was really good. I really, really liked it. The best sequel, I'm going to give to Thunderhead by Neil Shusterman, which is the second book in the Arc of a Scythe trilogy. It was a great sequel. The stakes went higher and everything was just dialed up, and it was really good. And then the best series ender I'm going to give to The Toll, which is the third and final book in the Arc of a Scythe trilogy. So that was a really good trilogy. So I could have given the start also to the first book, which is Scythe, but I wanted to go with First Law because I love the start to it, which is really funny because the Blade itself like doesn't have a plot. It's like, I don't know, it's kind of funny, but I really liked it still. It was a fun read because the characters were so good. Favorite new author I discovered in 2022. I will give that to two authors, Terry Pratchett and Joe Abercrombie. 2022 was my first time reading both of those authors, and I instantly just fell in love with their writing. They're both so amazing, and they're on like opposite sides of the spectrum too. Like Joe Abercrombie writes such dark stories and Terry Pratchett writes such lighthearted stories, but they're both so good and I loved the books I read from them so much. Next is best book from a genre you don't typically read or was out of your comfort zone. For me, that was The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton. So this book is a drama, it's a coming of age, it's like sort of a classic literature almost, like it's definitely older. It's something I really don't read like ever. And I don't know why I wanted to pick this one up. I think I just heard good things about it. And I remember seeing the movie adaptation when I was younger. And so I wanted to just give the book a try. And it was just very beautiful. It was a really, really good story with some amazing characters and a very sad life that they led. So I really liked The Outsiders. No fantasy to be found whatsoever in the book. So yeah, it was out of my comfort zone. Next is most action-packed / thrilling / unput-downable book of the year. And that's going to be Thunderhead by Neil Shusterman. Thunderhead was absolutely wild. It was a freaking thrill ride. It was adrenaline-inducing. It was good. Next is the book I read in 2022 that I would be most likely to reread next year, which is this year. And I'm going to give that to both The Hobbit and Fellowship of the Ring because I do plan to reread both of them. Like, first of all, I really liked them, but like there actually is a reason I want to reread them and I'm going to reread them. And it's because I read both. Well, I listened to both on audiobook last year. I listened to the Rob Inglis version, which was really good. He's a wonderful narrator. And I really, really want to try the Andy Serkis versions of both of those where he narrates. Thankfully, I liked them enough to want to read them again, but they were really good. So I am excited to reread those. Well, re-listen. Next is favorite cover of a book I read in 2022. And I actually I'm cheating because I have 3, but I couldn't decide. They're all middle grade. Well, sort of YA middle grade. You'll see. The first one is The Glass Switch by author tuber Lindsay Puckett. Look at this. It is so cute. I absolutely love the cover and the back cover too. It is so freaking cute. When I got this in the mail, I was staring at it for like ever because I was like, this is so cute. The colors are so vibrant. They work together so well. There's so much detail around. Like, it's a really good cover. I was very transfixed by this. The next 2 I'm including as like kind of a unit because it's the same illustrator for both and it's the same author. So I think they were like designed as probably part of a whole little deal. So first of all, The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. There are multiple versions of The Graveyard Book, but I bought this version and I really like it. I like how cartoony it is. I love the art. Hopefully it's picking up. It's really cute. I love it. It's almost like comic-ish. And the next one is Coraline. See, same style, kind of. It's very, very cute. And the back cover is there's not really much on there, but it's got a little kitty. So those are my favorite covers. Next is most memorable character. I'm going to list a favorite and I'm going to list some runners up because it was really hard to decide. So I think my most memorable winner is Sand Glokta from the First Law trilogy. He was just amazing. He was so complex. He was scary, but he was fun. I really liked Glokta. My 2 runners up are Bilbo Baggins and Moist Von Lipwig. Both amazing in their own rights, but I really had to give it to Glokta. Next is most beautifully written book I read in 2022. And while it wasn't my favorite book I read this year, and it didn't even crack my top 10. I am going to have to give this one to Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. The way he writes is just so beautiful. I think anyone who's read Name of the Wind would probably agree that Patrick Rothfuss has a very beautiful style of prose. So, had to give it to him. The next is OTP of the year, One True Pairing. This was interesting because as I was looking at the list of books I read last year, there weren't a lot with romance in them. So I didn't have a big pool to choose from, but even if I did, I still think that this pairing would have been my favorite. And that is Sophie and Howl from Howl's Moving Castle. They were so cute. I loved them. I just loved that whole freaking book, man. Howl and Sophie just had a really interesting, funny, cute relationship. So had to give it to them. The next one is my favorite non-romantic relationship of the year. This one was kind of hard too, because I just didn't know who to give it to. So I have two answers. The first one is Aziraphale and Crowley from Good Omens. They were just so funny. They were like, well, it's an angel and a demon, so, it's kind of an interesting relationship anyways. And they were very quippy, very funny, and they had a great friendship. And the second pairing is not two characters, but actually I haven't counted how many, 5 or 6, I think. And it is the group of Northmen in the First Law trilogy. I loved their relationships with each other. It was tense at times. It was not necessarily always friendly, but it always felt like they were just kind of brothers in this together. It was just really interesting to see them interact and how they worked together and how they battled together. So I really enjoyed that whole group. Next is Best World Building / Most Vivid Setting. And I have to give that to Middle Earth. I don't think that's even a freaking contest. It's Middle Earth. Book that put a smile on your face or was the most fun to read last year. I'm going to give that to Going Postal by Terry Pratchett. So I knew that Discworld was absurdist fantasy. It was funny. It was cute. But I didn't know how much of those things it was going to be until I read my first book in Discworld, which was Going Postal. And it was so funny. It was so quirky. It was just a really, really fun time. Last of the survey is Hidden Gem of the Year. And I'm going to give that to 2 separate books. The first is The Night Gardener, and the next is Spirit Hunters. These are both middle grade books, and they're both kind of spooky, and they were way spookier than I thought they were going to be. They were both kind of scary, actually. I had to read them during the daytime, okay? And I am a wimp, so understand that. But still, they were scary, okay? But they were so good. They had a lot of heart to them. They were emotional at times, but they were so good. And I have never heard anyone talk about them. So to me, these were hidden gems because I just happened to come upon them on Goodreads. So these are my hidden gems. And now I'm just going to do a few from the looking ahead section because I think that's kind of fun to see what I'm excited for in 2023. First off is the non-debut book I am anticipating most in 2023. And I did a whole section in my BookTube newbie tag video about the series that I was going to start in this year. So I'm going to just skip over all of those and pretend those don't exist for a second. And I'm going to choose a different book that I'm really, really excited to start this year. And that is Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. I have heard such good things about Legends and Lattes, and I love cozy books, so I cannot wait to start this one. I'm very excited. And next is the debut that I'm most excited for, so new release. And for me, I was looking at my TBR, and the only book I had on there, I think, that hadn't been released yet is Witch King by Martha Wells. So that's the book. And this book sounds really good. I was reading the description again and I was like, oh my gosh, I am so excited for this. I want to read it so bad. So I will definitely be getting it, hopefully reading it this year, but we'll see. But it's very exciting. So I think I might read it this year. And the final thing is, what do I hope to accomplish reading wise in 2023? I did create some goals for myself to try and just make sure I'm getting in other age groups and genres. So I'm kind of reading diversely and not just sticking to high fantasy. So the first is I want to read at least 5 middle grade books this year. I think that's going to be pretty easy, but sometimes I just kind of need a reminder to read middle grade. I want to read at least 7 books that I own. I'm kind of a library addict. I love going to the library. It's I've done it for my whole life. So it's it's really nostalgic to me. So I need to read books that I own. I need to get through them. So, yeah. The next is I want to read 5 urban fantasies. Urban fantasy is one of my favorite subgenres in fantasy, and for some reason I have a hard time finding books that I actually like in that subgenre. So I want to do a little bit more research this year and find more urban fantasies. The next is I want to read at least 5 sci-fi books. Sci-fi is a genre I do like a lot, but for some reason I just haven't been reading a lot of it. So I want to make more of a push to read more sci-fi. And the last thing is I want to read 2 new releases. I hardly ever read new releases. So I really want to make more of a push to seek those out this year. Just so I can see like what's out there, where the markets are heading, what's trending, all that kind of stuff. I want to be in the know. So if you have any recommendations, please leave them in the comments because I would absolutely love to maybe discover new books or find things that I can add to my TBR, which is so long already, but whatever. Let it be longer even. So that was my reading survey for 2022. If you watched until this point, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you being here and just, have a good day. Farewell.